My baby 411, parenting today.
Of all the topics we will feature in this platform, this one is the closest to my heart. Some time ago, when my son was 4 years old, he had a seizure. So we were out of home and I noticed his rise in temperature. So I rushed him home because this had happened before. He had always had dramatic fevers that rise very fast and always deteriorate in a convulsion. So I rushed him home and I had suppositories in the fridge because I was prepared, or so I thought. And I put a suppository paracetamol in his anus and I held him waiting for the fever to subside. But instead of subsiding, he started twitching. My worst nightmare was unfolding in front of my eyes. I felt sad. I felt like I had failed as a mother. But here's the thing, I held him facing up instead of facing on his side. So after like a minute, he stopped breathing. His eyes stared at one spot, his body went limp, and his heart stopped beating. So you can imagine how I felt at that point. So I put him down quickly on a flat surface, and I had watched CPR being done in a medical series called Grey's Anatomy, but I had never been trained. So I tried breathing through his mouth and it came out through his nose. And I thought, I don't think it's supposed to happen that way. So I started pumping his chest as I frantically yelled at the nanny to get help to get us to hospital. So I pumped his chest about 13 times and he started coughing and he coughed out saliva and he started crying and whimpering, but he was breathing. You can imagine how I felt at that point. You can imagine the emotions that were going on in my head. And so we rushed him to hospital and we got some medical intervention. That incident is actually the main inspiration behind these videos. I am truly grateful that I am now talking about a child who is alive, as opposed to talking about this of a child who never made it. I sure hope that this information will help another parent or another caregiver out there to never go through what we went through.
My baby 411, parenting today.
This is a continuation of our previous video where we talked about how to deal with fever. Occasionally the fever does deteriorate to a febrile seizure, and today we're going to talk about what do you do if your child does get a febrile seizure. According to a study done in Hayden Lutheran Church Hospital in northern Tanzania, about 4% of all the children under 10 who are admitted over 2 years have had a febrile seizure. In the US, between 2 and 5% of the children under 5 have had a febrile seizure. So what really is a seizure? A seizure, otherwise known as a fit or a convulsion, is when there is abnormal electrical activity in the brain. They usually last a few minutes. They stop spontaneously, and most of the times they're not life-threatening. However, it is a medical emergency to have a seizure last more than 5 minutes. Seizures can be caused by a number of things, but the most common cause of seizures in children under 5 is a quick rise in body temperature. These are the signs of a seizure: violent shaking due to uncontrollable muscle spasms, loss of consciousness, fixed or deviated eyes, and uncontrolled urination or bowel movement. So what do you do if your child is having a seizure? As usual, first thing, do not panic. Second thing, put them on their side. Do not put them facing up, put them on their side in case something is coming out through their mouth. It can come out, and you can put pillows around them so that they don't hurt themselves. Check to see if they're breathing, but if they're not breathing, take them to hospital immediately. Do not attempt CPR on a child who's having a seizure. Loosen tight clothing around the child, especially around the head and around the neck. Do not try to stop the shaking manually. You cannot stop the seizure. It's coming from the brain and you cannot manually stop it. Do not try to put things in their mouth to stop them from hurting their tongue. We have always thought that it is good to put something in their mouth so that they don't bite their tongue. But recent studies have shown that this can actually cause more harm than good. It is better to put them on their side and not facing up. If the child vomits, keep them on their side to ensure that they don't choke on their own vomit. Try to time how long the seizure lasts. I know this one is hard, but just try. Once the seizure subsides, cool them down, remove their clothing, and put on the fans if they're available. If indeed the seizure was caused by a high rise in temperature, then it means the child will be hot to feel. Their neck will be hot, their tummy will be hot, and maybe their armpit will be hot. And you can always confirm this using a thermometer. Then you should give them a paracetamol or an ibuprofen to help bring down the fever. You can use the suppositories if you have them, and use them rectally or through the anus. You can also use oral medicine if the child is completely conscious and awake. The child is likely to be sleepy after a seizure. Please put them in the recovery position so that their airways are open. Stay with the child after the seizure until they are completely awake. Observe for normal breathing, and if they're not breathing normally, you can do CPR or rescue breaths. For more information on this, please watch our video on CPR in our channel, Mwanangu 411. After a seizure, always go to hospital so that the doctor can assess the cause of the seizure. Make sure you give the doctor as much information as possible and give the history of the child. This will help the doctor to quickly narrow down on what is the likely cause of the seizure. When the child is unresponsive but is breathing normally, you need to keep them in the recovery position so that you keep their airways open. Hold the child on their side with their head tilted downwards. Put one hand on their head and the other hand on their back. Hold them this way until they are now responsive and appear to be breathing normally.
My baby 411, parenting today.
When it comes to seizures, parents and caregivers, please refrain from myths. For example, do not urinate on the child, or put things on their skin, or put things in their mouth. This will not help at all. A seizure comes from the brain and you cannot manually stop it. If your child is prone to convulsions, please talk to your doctor so that you can have preventive measures that can help manage this in future. Always remember, the first thing, do not panic. If you panic, you will not be able to think clearly and you might end up making a mistake. Second thing, even if you don't remember all the steps, it is important to do something instead of doing nothing.
Thank you for watching. We hope this information has been useful. For more videos on first aid and parenting, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. For more information, you can visit our website, Mwanangu 411, and you can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.